Can I sin enough to overcome the cross? Hi, my name is Ted Rosenblatt, and I'm here with my father, Dr. Rod Rosenblatt, and this is Talks with Dad Rod. It's always in there. It's always in there, this voice that tells me this time I've done it. There's something, it's weird. It's the weirdest thing that any given day when I'm fighting sin, something's going to nag at me and say, now you've done it. And there's this temptation to ask this question. It's really a question for your pastor or something. It is. It's really a pastoral sort of question. So I'm coming to you with something that's going to be affecting a whole bunch of us sinners, right? Right? I'm not the only guy in the room, right? That suffers with this sort of thing where you're like, certainly now that I have undone Jesus, it is finished. Jesus said it is finished until he met Ted Rosenblatt, at which point it was no longer finished.
Yeah, very real. And we love boundaries. We love quantifying. We love the law. We love extrapolating and speculating from the law. We all do it. First of all, spend more time, especially in the New Testament, and especially the promises. And globally, take a look at the kind of people Jesus was associated with. Think of Matthew. Matthew was a despised by his own people tax collector, functioning for the Romans every single day.
He's the guy I wanted to hate as much as they did, and I've come over time to love him the most. Ugh, that's so frustrating. Go ahead.
No, but to spend your time on the promises and the audience to whom he was saying those promises. Because over and over and over and over again, it's the dregs and rejects he's spending his time with. And he's proclaiming good news to them, the rejects.
And that's what he was accused of.
Yep.
That's exactly what the Sanhedrin came after him for. They were sitting there going, look at that.
Yep.
He is dining with sinners.
Yep.
And they weren't saying like those who sinned before. They're sinning now.
Yep.
They've lived they were also sinned before. They've lived this long life of all kinds of problems, big ones, public ones.
Yep.
But they're continuing to sin.
Yeah. Keep reading the promises to people like that, because we're one of them. People like that.
It's funny that the way the internal, if you're like me, the conversation internally goes, there's a divide.
Yep.
That somehow Jesus came to save sinners. And we played with this before. I was working with our cohort here, Ritchie, before we did one where we played with the question a little bit. Did, God come send his son to save sinners like me? But that's what happens. If you look back in our catalog, that's what happens is that internally, I will emotionally or mentally separate myself off from those guys. Yeah, Jesus knew those sinners. Yeah, but somehow in my mind, I've raised my quantity or quality of sin to be such a level that Jesus didn't know I was coming.
Yep.
And that his shed blood isn't enough to cover me.
Yep. That's the inner conversation. That's the one that's got to be gone after. And the text and the promises are the way to go after it. And I hope your pastor does too every Sunday. But if he doesn't, the text and especially the promises.
And I'll be honest, I know this is just not, this is a pastoral question. Your pastor is there to do this sort of thing, but I can't tell you what it meant for me to be able to trust you to confess things even eventually. There were things I was so guilty of that I couldn't even talk to you about it. But talking to you about it, even though it wasn't the formal absolution that I got from a pastor for my sins, I can't tell you what it did to have a dad that is implicitly going, it's going to be okay. and that made it easier for me to talk to my pastor as well. So this conversational sort of environment you have in your home made it easier to sort of just bleed out all that stuff, even in front of our friends and family, because you gathered together like people. That was, it's not church, but it was, you talked once about what it was like with your dad, having the pool on during the winter. So you guys, when the guys were out of,
I heated it up secretly, ran it up to 70 degrees when the outside temperature was 40.
Back when you could actually afford energy to do that sort of thing.
Right.
And how was that received by, the people over? You tell me. I'm assuming that what happened at your dad's house was very similar to how you did your house. It was just sort of fairly safe and fun.
Yeah. Formed me. Years of that forms you. And I got 1,000 stories about that, but not for here, not for now.
Yeah, I'm kind of tapping into that though, because it's funny how that is it's a mirror, it's an echo of what goes on in the church if it's done right. If you're being delivered the things that you should be delivered, when your sin is crushing you and you're certain that you've outsinned the cross.
Yep.
You need somebody like from the outside like that, your pastor, to come to you and say, "Let me take that off of you, you poor sinner."
Yep.
Just like your dad, it's different. It's a lighter version. It's not the formal thing. But
helps anyway.
To get that off of your shoulders and you're okay and you could sleep at night and you're not anxious and you're not scared out of your ever-loving mind because you're certain that the law of God is going to trap you somehow or something.
Right.
You read these passages and they're crushing. See, I've done them. I've done the thing.
Yep.
I drink alcohol sometimes. I must be doomed.
Oh, goodness.
So that these are the thing we talk about this stuff, and so much of what we do is a pointer. We're pointing towards where you should be getting it, right? So you should be hearing this stuff, receiving these gifts at your local church, and the gospel should be the primary thing. Christ crucified for sinners. This kind of sinner, a sinner like St. Paul, and probably. We're talking bad sinners, right? So those of us who are just crushed and we just got nothing left, those sinners, you, right? And being able to have that in your house kept me through when I was struggling within the church. So in that sense, God, I think, used you to keep my faith on a lifeboat through that and not utterly reject everything.
Yeah.
And I think I would have come back anyway. I couldn't help it. God is obviously doing something with me. I used to be behind the camera. I wasn't in front of the camera. Here I am. And this is my theology is the way it is because of you and the men around who've formed that. But it was all continued within the church. The pastors did that same.
Some of them.
Well, the ones you had me.
Yeah.
See, I understand. Your old line was, I drive by however many numbers of churches to go to the church where I receive the gifts that I'm to receive.
Yep.
And that's what we do. We've done it our whole lives. But it really actually has material. It matters. It matters to our souls that we receive these things.
Right.
So, and by the way, at some point, and we'll do this another episode, Dad used to be a stand-in pastor. So I have stories growing up with Dad as the pastor and what that was like. I was struggling with the church, even with Dad as pastor. Imagine that. Because it just doesn't, some would argue Dad would hate it if I said it doesn't get better. I think there's so many great ones we can point to, but it was something to struggle with the church, even when it was being done very well. So, trying to expose you to this so that you understand that this is it's not a magic trick. It's not going to just be fixed because you came to the faith, and this is the life. This is the Christian life. This is what it's like to go to, like St. Paul in Romans 7.
Yep.
So, all right. Come to 1517.org for more, and we will see you on social media. Talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us on Talks with Dad Rod, part of the 1517 Podcast Network. This podcast and all 1517's content is made possible through financial support by listeners just like you. Please visit 1517.org for more, and please consider clicking on the donate button and making a recurring or one-time contribution to help us share this good news in a world which so desperately needs it.